Hello, everyone. We are live, yes. And welcome to my show. This is Clip's Dark Gems. And I've got a very special guest for us today. And that is Big L from his awesome channel, Big L Does Booktube. And now, from what I've noticed, you're going to wave just now, Big L. He reads all kinds of genres, from classics to science fiction, fantasy, and a little bit of horror as well. And we're going to be talking about horror. And just excuse that someone has started cutting their lawn next door to our house, just makes it more exciting. But yeah, we're going to talk about classic horror, and we're going to talk about things like that today. So yeah, welcome, and welcome, Big Al.
Thank you very much, Cliff. Yeah, it's really good to be here. My first ever live stream. So, I'm excited. Even with the grass cutting going on, I can't wait to talk to you about some horror today. So,
you know what the interesting thing about this grass cutting? It was almost as I went, 3, 2, 1, and then he started hitting it.
He was waiting.
It was waiting for the countdown for the start. Hi, Leslie, and hello, Kat. Yeah,
Hey, Kat.
Yeah, and Leslie. Hi, Leslie. So yeah, tell us a bit about your reading background. Hopefully this won't take forever, although I'm very worried that it might, because it's a municipality. For some reason, they've decided this is a good time to suddenly start cutting the grass. Tell us about your reading background. Just enjoy it. And fantasy, horror, what got you into horror, the kind of horror that you enjoy.
Yeah. So I probably got into reading through my dad. He would read stories to me when I was young, and he'd always have some books on the bookshelf, some old hardbacks and stuff. And the first book that ever scared me was Treasure Island. The first book I ever read that had there's a couple of scenes in Treasure Island that really shook me up. Yeah, the scene where they sneak back aboard the boat at night and they pretend to be dead, and it's like an ambush in the moonlight and stuff. All that kind of stuff. Yeah, really was crazy for me, being only a youngster. But I think what really got me into reading horror was probably, in a weird way, horror cassette tapes. So
cassette tape.
Yeah. So what it is
I remember those.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So in the UK, at least, on the TV in the 80s, you could only really watch older movies on the TV, because it took so long for things to come to TV. You would only be able to watch, kind of like early 70s Hammer horror, or maybe some black and white 50s horror movies. But when you used to walk in the video stores, the movies from 2 or 3 years ago that were on the cinema would be there to rent. I remember in the 80s going in for my sweets, maybe my my playing cards and stuff, and seeing all of the the great painted covers of all the old horror movies, that kind of 80s, like all those band movies and stuff. And and then recognizing those kind of names on like a bookshelf, and then seeing, oh right, like whether it was a novelization or whether the movie was based on a book or whatever. And I remember the first book I remember seeing on my father's shelf was the 1831 edition of Frankenstein, and pulling it off and trying to read it. And after a few chapters, it's tough. It's it's a 19th century novel. It's a bit tough.
Because you did a great review on that earlier on in last year. I saw that you did a review on Frankenstein. You did a good one.
I did discuss it, but that wasn't really an official review. But yeah, I did discuss Frankenstein. I'd like to do a proper review for Frankenstein, because I never did give it a rating or anything. But I suppose whenever I do my top 10 books or top 100 books, I'm sure it will be in there anyway, so it'll get a mention for sure. But yeah, so it's a book I've read a few times over the years, and definitely a favorite. But yeah, I just remember picking it off the shelf because it had like a really good. I think it was like a early 70s paperback, that one, and it had a really cool cover of him scaling like a cliff face or something. And it's one of my favorite books. Yeah.
Funny enough, it didn't work for me. This is one of those unpopular opinions. A lot of people were trying to get me to read Frankenstein and telling me how awesome it is, and it didn't work for me. And I think mainly, I'm hoping this will go away. I really do, but I'm sure it will eventually. But it didn't work for me because I couldn't stand the character of Frankenstein. I found
Yeah.
him to be very unlikable, and some people have said, well, that's supposed to be that way. He's unlikable. But I found him very unlikable, and it took away
Mm.
from my enjoyment of the story, even though I know what it was about. The tragedy of his situation. I just found the whole thing was just too much. Okay, wait. Ellen is saying, how's it as well? Hi, Ellen.
Oh, hey Al.
Yeah. Big Hard Books and Classics, awesome channel. Check it out as well.
Yeah, I love that channel.
Yeah. You're watching these channels, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of your other classics that you enjoyed? I know that when I looked at this video that we were going to make together, I went through your backlog all the way down to see some of the books that you've reviewed that are horror classics, because I know that that's something you enjoy.
Yeah, I've got a little stack here actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so one we've already kind of discussed offline a little bit was there's definitely a classic was Dracula. So
brilliant.
yeah, one that I only actually read like 6 months ago, but one I really, really enjoyed. I thought the first half of that novel actually was it might be the best first half of any novel I've read actually. I thought it might end up being my favourite novel of all time, but I found the second half was more of like an adventure novel. The first half, the epistolary first half is fantastic, really, really nice.
What made it so good for you?
It's really the quality. Yeah, I think it's the quality of the even though the conversations are through letters and diary entries. It's the quality of the dialogue there. How he's able to paint such a kind of vivid picture through almost kind of third hand. It's almost like third hand, isn't it? Because it's been written down.
That travel to the castle and
that's just unbelievable. Yeah.
I've actually got something to recommend you, and it's not a vampire. It's not a vampire novel. And when I was thinking about Dracula, when I think about Dracula, it's very slow burn, isn't it? Actually, no, this could also almost be for your other. I'm actually going to save this because you've got another vampire novel you're going to talk about.
Yes.
So I'm going to save it for that one.
Okay.
Because also Dracula is very gothic, right? Very dark, very gothic. And now this might come as a surprise. But because you mentioned Frankenstein as well, I'm going to mention a classic novel that's not so much horror, but it's dark gothic that I really fell in love with. And this is not a horror. And that is Jane Eyre.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you've read Jane Eyre. Have you read Jane Eyre?
I have not, but it is. I can't remember if it's actually in my next 100 books to read. But yeah, it's one on my shelf and one I'm very aware of. Yeah.
I find it phenomenal. And there are dark elements in that book. They're not horror, but it is very gothic, very bleak at times. I love that book. So that's one I would recommend as well. So what is the other vampire novel that you mentioned to me? Now, because I've got something waiting for you here.
Yeah. So that's Salem's Lot. I'm trying to hold it up, but the screen is reversed. It's flipped, so I'm holding it the wrong way. Salem's Lot. Very close to being my favourite horror book that I've read. Like I was saying to you before, I probably read less than 30 horror books. Or around that number. But certainly, I would say this would be up there with Frankenstein for me. It's like the greatest horror book I've read. I can't believe how effective this was. Everything I like from a book, whether it's great dialogue and great characters and a great story, because obviously Stephen King's probably his best thing, his story. But also just how effective it was as a horror book. I was actually quite creeped out by one of the scenes in this. I was like, I knew I was reading a book, but still, like I felt the hairs kind of stand on the end of my, stand up on my arm. I was like, wow, that's powerful for a book to do that to me.
And Salem's Lot is absolutely magnificent. I really enjoyed that. Happens to be my wife's favorite as well. She'll probably mention it in the comment somewhere. But I've got a recommendation for you that's not a vampire novel. Because Salem's Lot is very slow build, very slow burn. Doesn't really take off dramatically until towards the end, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about it, the town becomes almost a character as well. what's
Oh,
happening in the town,
100%. Yeah,
the people in
definitely.
the town. I want to recommend another very slow burn book that takes its time building up, and the payoff is really good. It's very creepy. Another novel where there's this town that also almost becomes central to the narrative, and that is Ghost Story by Peter Straub. There's something about this book. It's very, very slow burn. It turns a lot of people off, but it's creepy as hell. And as it says, it's a ghost story, but it builds, and the tension builds, and the payoff is really quite something. And I think you'll really enjoy that. And
Yeah,
another
it sounds like
recommendation.
something I'd like.
So yeah, it's
Definitely.
good, and it also has that sort of classic feel to it as well. So I think you'll appreciate that as well, in the kind of tone and in the way it's written. Another book that I really recommend, a more modern take on the vampire tale, that is bloody terrifying, and one of my favorite books, and that is Let the Right One In by John Lindquist. And I have mentioned this on my channel, and it's something completely different. But what I like about it is that it's old school in a way that it's like the vampires aren't all sparkly and shiny and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's a modern vampire book, but it's very chilling and bleak and dark and it'll yeah
Yeah, I
give you the
really
creep.
enjoyed the Scandinavian movie. That
Yeah, you've seen the
that
movie.
was based on that. Yeah, wow, what a movie! That's great.
Yeah. Well, if you enjoy the movie, you're going to absolutely love this book, and I highly recommend it. Yeah. Should we just check in the comments quickly?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. What we got here? We got books. Leslie says, "I need to read Frankenstein again." Yeah. Kat says, "I love Frankenstein and Dracula." My wife says Salem's Lot's her favorite Stephen King book.
Good taste.
Yeah, good taste. Yeah.
Good taste.
Yes, I'm always happy to see Salem Lot fans. Big Art Books and Classic. Oh, yeah. This is a good one from L, from Big Art Books and Classics. The Historian is a big, long Dracula novel. Also very classic. I don't know if I read all of that. I think I might have started it, but I maybe need to give it another chance. But that's probably as close as you're going to get to Dracula. The Historian, I can't remember who it's by.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
Have you never heard of it?
No, that's one I've never heard of. Yeah.
Yeah, someone tell me please who it's by. But I think it might be worth having a look. And Kat says, well written. Okay. Well written. The movie was great. Here we go. Found it. Elizabeth Kostova. Yeah, that's right.
Excellent.
Look it up. Write it down. You might really enjoy that. It's an excellent recommendation. Okay, let's move on to another book. You've got a lot of classics there.
I'd like to talk about unpopular opinions. So, one you shared earlier, and one I saw on Booktube, actually, I think it was yesterday, was Michael K. Vaughan saying he didn't enjoy The Stand, which is sacrilege in my opinion. But not every book works for everyone, and I know that you particularly didn't enjoy The Great God Pan
I
by
didn't.
Arthur Machen. Yeah.
I didn't, and I've got some alternatives for you. Because
Let's go. Let's talk.
It's a very weird kind of Lovecraftian story. You know,
Definitely.
kind of the unknowable and the terror and the unseen and all that. And I just didn't think it was particularly well written, to be honest, and the characters and the build-up of tension. I would far more recommend Lovecraft for you. I think Lovecraft is superior in that. But I've got a couple of other mentions here as well. Thomas Ligotti, Grimscribe. Now, very, very weird. Goes to very unexpected places. His short stories. This is an awesome collection, Grimscribe. And then there's also two books that I reviewed at the end of last year, which is The Willows by Algernon Blackwood. And also, what was the other one? I think I did write it down here somewhere. The Willows by Algernon Blackwood and Wendigo, The Wendigo. And you just got that atmosphere, you've got that mood, you've got that. And I think all of those in the sense of something that is where, the reality of something is a nightmare.
Yeah.
can't see the threat, sort of thing. All of these, in a way, for me, are superior. And, that kind of mystery that's just on the outskirts that you can't see. Lovecraft does so well. The unknowable terror, all that stuff. I think that the Great God Pan, I could see what was happening there, but I didn't enjoy it.
That's fair. I've only read 2 of the Lovecraft stories so far. The Call of Cthulhu and Dunwich Horror are the only 2 I've read so far. But I'm getting through them bit by bit.
Yeah. I'd highly recommend the color of magic. Oh, what? No, the color of magic, not practical.
Yeah, I know the one you mean. Yeah, it's color out of shape, is it? Or something?
Out of. Why am I getting confused here? The color. Oh, okay, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I'm not going to mention all the other ones that I've read by him, but he's a good author.
Be here forever. Yeah.
He's just so good at creating tension with characters. And I found, it's written some really good ones. The Dunwich Horror being one of them as well. The Rats is also very good. Creates awesome tension. So that's my unpopular opinion. The Stand, you mentioned The Stand?
Yeah. I'll get back to The Stand in a little bit, because we'll talk about bridging the genres in a little while, I suppose. But I did want to say, if you didn't enjoy Great God Pan, I noticed that you've read quite a few collections, like horror collections, and quite enjoy them. And Arthur Machen does have a short story collection called The Three Imposters. I don't know if you've ever read that or heard of that.
I know that I've read Arthur mentioned before, but it might have been in one of those compilations. Yeah, like a horror.
Yeah. So you might have read one of those stories before. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So you recommend that?
I just think it's a little bit more. The horror's a little bit more obvious, I think. I think the Great God Pan, he's tried to be probably overly subtle with his delivery, whereas the Three Imposters, the style of delivery is different in each of the 3 stories. So one of them is quite similar to the Great God Pan, unfortunately. So that one probably wouldn't be a favourite. But the other 2 stories are different enough, to give it kind of so you can kind of tell if you like the author or not. But yeah, it is very much that kind of Lovecraftian style still, for sure.
Yeah. I just don't think anyone quite matches Lovecraft. I think the closest for me is Thomas Ligotti, but his books get very weird, very strange. There's one in particular. What have I done with it now? What is the first one in this book? The short story is The Last Feast of Harlequin. Man, it goes to weird places. But I was there for it. It's really, really fun. So I really recommend that you give this guy a go. Have you never heard of him?
I think you've mentioned him on your channel, actually.
I don't think so.
Oh, right. I have heard of him, but I just assumed it was from you.
No, it's
I
really,
have heard of his name. Yeah.
It's very classic, sort of, but it goes to weirder places in Lovecraft and these other authors. I recommend you give it a go. Maybe not as classic, maybe a little bit more modern. But I really enjoy it. Any other classic things up your sleeve, or should we have a look and see what people are getting at here?
We could do a few messages first. Yeah.
Yeah. What's this one? I'm getting ready to read some Stephen Graham Jones series, starting with My Heart is a Chainsaw. Yeah, I'm going to start reading that at some stage. Color Out of Space. What did I say? The Color Out of Magic is a favorite Lovecraftian story. It's brilliant. You have to read The Color Out of Space. It's probably his best, or one of his best. Okay, what's the next one? Okay, Joe, I'd love to see the Nick Cage version. Okay, that's the video with Nick Cage. Okay, they're having a little conversation here. Home at old slasher movies. Michael K. Vaughan, how you doing? Hey, Michael, thanks for dropping by. all of us are shocked by that opinion of the great God Dan. I mean, Lovecraft is better, but I'm still shocked. Oh, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Maybe I should give it a reread sometimes because you said so. Okay. And then we got Big Hard's books. Don't Fear the Reaper. I've got that too. Okay, so that's, I think, part 2 in the My Heart is a Chainsaw, and then there's Don't Fear the Reaper. I haven't got to Stephen Graham Jones. Look, there's a lot of modern authors, modern horror authors that write these novellas that I haven't got to yet, but I'll get to them one day. Still got this year and next year, and I'll get to a lot more of them. So yeah, any more classics that you got in store for me? This is good.
I've got a couple more in my lap. Just H.G. Wells, The Island of Dr. Moreau. I always consider this kind of a horror book. It's certainly creepy enough.
It is
disturbing enough.
Experimenting with animals and people. That's pretty damn horrific. I read it a long time ago. Just remind me what it's about properly again, and maybe some of the themes, because it's a long time since I've read this one.
Well, I'd actually say that theme-wise, this is Lord of the Flies, but better and done first. It really is a book that kind of tackles kind of society and morality and kind of what is taboo and what is not taboo.
Yeah, isn't it about science gone wrong, science gone berserk?
Well, this is it. I mean, its themes are very subtle in that it has this, overarching theme of like, don't play God, don't mess around with science, and it clubs you over the head with that straight out of the gate. And it is very, it's extremely disturbing the way, H.G. Wells doesn't hold back to kind of show you that these creatures are in pain, they're being tortured, the things that happen to them often don't work out, and they're in terrible pain, and they've been spliced together out of different animals and stuff, and it's obviously like really horrific, and the guy is clearly like losing his mind while stranded on this island with these crazy lunatics, basically. But there is also all these other themes working underneath that you don't really realize you're picking up until kind of after you finish reading and you kind of reflect on the book. And I think this is actually this is a classic piece of literature that people just do not appreciate. The issue is you can't read this, you can't put this into schools or colleges. It's not appropriate anymore. It was written over 100 years ago, and it's just not appropriate. It is a bit of a controversial read these days. But as far as the actual quality of the content, it's I think one of the most overlooked books for sure.
Yeah. When I actually saw that, I couldn't help thinking about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, sort of thing. Right. Or maybe with Frankenstein. Have you read that?
No, I have got Dr. Jekyll on my shelf though. So
yeah, it was just a dual personality of humanity, kind of. I don't know. I'm actually not massive into those kind of a more sort of inclination towards science fiction and science gone wrong. So you're definitely more able to talk about that than I am. So yeah. Any other great classics that you want to mention?
Yeah, so I just grabbed what I could find on my shelves that was nearby, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. But these are all ones that kind of stood out to me. I just want to throw this up here because Frozen Hell is the original manuscript version of Who Goes There? Which is obviously the book based on The Thing. And this does really...
I read Who Goes There, but I didn't read that. And... I don't want to upset Michael again. I did enjoy Who Goes There, but not anywhere close to as much as I enjoyed The Thing. It's just a different level of terror. And I suppose it doesn't help the fact that you've seen the movie 10 times and then you try to read that novelization, Who Goes There. But how is that different to what you've got there? Is it the same thing?
Yeah, so effectively, this is unchanged from Who Goes There, apart from they just added the missing chapters to the start. So it was edited just to remove the first, I think it was 2 or 3 chapters, just to make it basically give it some brevity, allow it to be distributed easier in sci-fi magazines and what have you. So yeah, it was never intended to be read like this. This is published posthumously. But yeah, I like, as you know, you've mentioned already, I really appreciate a slow burn. And Who Goes There doesn't give you a slow burn, but this allows you to have the slow burn back, basically. So
Okay.
yeah, you won't, if you didn't like the book originally, you won't like this either. It doesn't change it in any way other than it gives you that kind of built atmosphere build up beforehand. That's the only thing it changes effectively. But
I
I
think
prefer the movie too.
yeah,
Controversial opinion, but I prefer the
yeah,
movie too. I love that movie.
yeah.
One
I
of my
think
favorite movies ever.
one of the problems is you watch a movie that is just top notch like that, so terrifying, full of so much paranoia, so much dread, so much. It's such a good movie, and you watch that
Right.
enough times, and then you try to read the book. This could be any kind of novelization or any book where the movie is just so. I found it difficult to get into the novelization. Who Goes There? Because there weren't any surprises. I also didn't find the tension nearly anywhere as unbearable as in the movie. It's really ratcheted up to a certain point where you just squirm. I didn't find that in the novelization. Um,
Yeah, I think what Carpenter did that was so clever is he found the parts of that novel that worked, and he just drew on them and he drew them out. So the scene where
yeah,
they're doing the tests, he drew it out. The isolation where oh, someone's not been here, we haven't been able to keep an eye on them, he drew it out. The setup with the dogs and stuff. He just took all the parts of that story that worked well, and he just
yeah,
expanded on them to the point where he made them all better. He made almost every facet work
yeah,
more efficiently. So. But yeah,
yeah.
I love all of his movies. To be fair, he's a bit of a genius, if you ask me.
No, it is absolutely one of my favorite as well. And like I say, The Thing is probably in my top three horror movies of all time, most definitely.
Yep, mine too.
Absolutely terrifying. Yeah. Should we have a look at the comments quickly?
Let's go.
Besides the fact that Michael's shocked at me, I feel very bad about that. Uh, oh, Big Old Books, I love the title. Kat says, Big Old Books and Classics. I love the title, especially because it reminds me of a favorite song by Blue Oyster Cult. Maybe the title of his channel, Big Hard
Yeah,
Books and Classics. But yeah, when I think of Blue Oyster Cult, I think of Don't Fear the Reaper. And Don't Fear the Reaper was in a mini series that we were going to talk a book we're going to talk about soon, called The Stand. Because right at the beginning, I don't know if you've seen it. I actually like the mini series. I think it's great.
oh, yeah, I really liked it. I watched it
And,
two, 3 Christmases ago. Watched it again.
yeah,
First
yeah,
time since
yeah.
it
I
first
think
come out,
Molly,
I suppose.
I think Molly Ringwald as Fran is a bit irritating, but besides that, I think it's a very good mini series for its time. But I love the opening sequence with the crow, and when the guy goes through the
Oh, that's a
when he
great
gets out of
opening
there,
sequence. Yeah,
and then the song "Don't Fear the Reaper," and you just see these bodies slump everywhere. I think it's brilliant.
that's a great start. Yeah.
So don't you think that's a good reason to wait? Hang on, people are actually saying it. Yeah, brilliant song. I love the song. The Thing is a classic. Won't go wrong. Yeah. So tell me about The Stand. Let's move into that for a little bit
Yeah, let's do it.
because we did quite nicely.
So
Yeah.
the only reason I actually read The Stand is because I really wanted to read Dark Tower, and I was told again and again you can't read the Dark Tower because you haven't read Salem's Lot and you haven't read The Stand. So you have to go and do that first. Otherwise, you can't read the
Because
Dark Tower.
of
So
Ronald Flagg, right?
exactly, yeah. So yeah. So until you know kind of Flagg's backstory and stuff. So I had already seen the miniseries of The Stand, but it had been years. I don't know when did it come out, 94 or something. I hadn't watched it in so long. Effectively, most of the main plot points and characters were lost to me now. So reading the book was really good to kind of get to kind of relive the experience really. And I read the original manuscript 1990 version. Obviously, he changed all the references, but I actually thought finding out the stuff he cut as well. I actually thought I really enjoyed those parts of the book as well. So even though they were sometimes crazy. Like I can understand why an editor would want to cut them out because they are absolutely bananas. But I think the book just works so well. I don't know how he managed to make everything so vivid, like every scene, every character interaction. Obviously, it's like our real world, but at the same time,
Yeah.
there's something surreal about everything that happens in that book. But
Absolutely.
it just gets under your skin.
Yeah. I love the fact that Stephen King, I think more than any other author, does characters so well. The Stand is one of those books. It is another one where you just remember every single character. And yeah, I'd say. And there's one other book that I'm going to talk about just now that I'm going to recommend to you if you enjoyed The Stand. But yeah, I love his world building. I love his characters. It's just masterful storytelling. And it's, like you said, how could you cut stuff like in that book? I read the, what do you call it? Unabridged, whatever, the long version. And I don't think there's any paragraph wasted. I just absolutely went through all of that. Oh, here's Farah. Hi, Farah. Hello. Yeah, it's Farah from Bookstalgic. Michael said it's hard to top the thing. Foster doing good. Okay. So yeah. So carry on with The Stand.
Yeah.
Or we done with that?
No, the only last thing I wanted to say about it, really, other than that, I think it's a great book for people that want to jump genres. I think if you want to jump into sci-fi or fantasy from horror, I think that's a really good place to pick up The Stand, because I feel like it's one of those that people are going to recognize from, you know, magical realism. They're going to recognize it from dystopian sci-fi. They're going to recognize it from fantasy, the whole kind of journey aspects and stuff. So yeah, I think it's such a great book for people that want to read between genres as well.
I think you're absolutely right there. I've been saying it on my channel forever. Stephen King is not just a horror author. He's a masterful storyteller. He's a storyteller. And in so many of his stories, okay, maybe some of his early 80s, 70s things, like Cujo, it's just a horror masterclass. But he's written so many novels that can appeal to different people in different ways because he knows how to tell the story. Okay? He knows how to spin a yarn better than anyone else. And like you say, yeah, a lot of it seems to cross over between different genres. And I mean, I love 11/22/63, and you can hardly call that horror novel, even though it's Stephen King. But I would like to introduce you to my favorite novel of all time. And if you like The Stand, remember we said, if you like this, you'll like that. That is Swan Song. That's this way, yeah. Now, this is also over 1,000 pages, or close to 1,000 pages, and not a single paragraph is wasted, in my opinion. Not a single line is wasted. This is just truly, truly, truly epic. And just like Stephen King, it is basically a masterclass in character development, in world building. And even though people compare the two, I think it's very, very unfair. I think this, I actually prefer this over The Stand, but they are very different beasts. From the root cause of this post-apocalyptic world, the one is a nuclear holocaust, and in the case of The Stand, it's what is it again? The virus, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a very different world that's presented in this book to The Stand, but just absolutely magnificent. So yeah, I definitely recommend this.
That will definitely get read by me because it's actually in my top 50 books that I need to read. So I'll probably be reading that about this time next year. So yeah.
Yeah.
I'll definitely get around to your favorite book. Don't worry, Cliff.
No, you have to do that. It's just absolutely phenomenal, really. Okay, before we go into your fantasy recommendations, because I know that you said you had some for us. Let's see if there's any other comments here. Someone new here. Obscure Book Adventures. How are you doing? Welcome. Hi, everybody. I recently read my first Stephen King book, Creep Show, and absolutely loved it. A real tribute to 1950s pulp. Loved the film also. I haven't actually read the book, but the movie is hysterical. It's very dark humor, and it's a collection of like 3 stories. And what's actually very interesting about Creepshow is the first story. You are introduced at the beginning of the story to Stephen King's son, and that is Joe Hill, who is the son, and the father's downstairs, is taken away. It's horror comics. So the son's upstairs with a voodoo doll, sticking pins in the voodoo doll to get back at the father. And that's actually Joe Hill right from the beginning. But yeah, it's absolutely hysterical. I love Creepshow. So what does Farrah say? Yes, you are a little bit of a newbie, but you're going to make up for lost time. Excited to know there are so many books to look forward to. Yeah, Swan Song is my #1 read of all time. Love it. We actually went on holiday. Just a little story. We went on a 2-week holiday. Quite close up here when we were still living in the city, on the coast. I picked up Swan Song. I didn't want to speak to my wife for 3 days. I didn't. Okay, now that's come across kind of rough. I did want to speak to my wife.
We need context, Cliff.
Yeah, there's a context between me and the book and her. Okay, I didn't put it down for 3 days. I finished that book in one sitting, and then I said, "Here you go, honey, read this book." And she did it in about 4 or 5 days. 900 pages. It just blew us both away. And it's nice when you're in an environment, or you're on holiday, where you can just sit down and you can just read. There's no other external stuff you have to worry about, and it was just wonderful. So really, really, really was picking up. Yeah. Michael K. Vaughan says, I second that Creepshow recommendation. It's brilliant. Yeah, I'd love to pick up the book as well as a movie. It's very pulpy. It's very dark humor, the movies. It's got some hysterical actors in the one. I think I remember, help me here, people, Leslie Nielsen from Airplane. He's a bad guy in one of them. It's just absolutely so funny. And Stephen King he kind of appears in one of them as well. So it's all very tongue-in-cheek, dark humor, just a lot of fun. Okay, Obscure Book Adventures. Sorry if this is shaking. Oh, I didn't know it was his son. I think Stephen King played also in the film. I thought he was pretty good. Yeah, he gets meteor shit on him, and he gets taken over by this meteor shit and becomes this thing. Till eventually, a little bit like The Fly. Have you seen The Fly? David Cronenberg. Yeah, a little bit like that. A little bit like that. Stephen King gets taken over by this meteor, and he plays this very weird character, and eventually he can't hardly move. So, yeah, okay, that's a spoiler. Sorry. Fantasy recommendations for horror readers. It's your turn.
Yeah, I just want to quickly throw out the last 2 classics. I just want to say a shout out to Edgar Allan Poe. It's been many years since I've read any Edgar Allan Poe, but if you'd asked me 20 years ago, I was reading a lot of Edgar Allan Poe. And then, what is your
favorite story in that one?
I think this collection, I've got, The Pit and the Pendulum.
Out of any of them, Pit and the Pendulum is my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, that I don't know. That's one of only about 2 or 3 that I can actually remember, because it's been, like I say, over 20 years. But yeah, it'd be hard pushed at this point without a reread, to be fair, to be able to say conclusively what is my favourite. Did you say that was your favourite?
The Pit and the Pendulum is my favourite, without a doubt. I also like the Telltale Heart thing about guilt, and it's very creepy. And then the Black Cat as well. Serious violence against animals there, but I love those 3. Those are really good ones. And of course, there's Murders in the Rue Morgue, I think. Yeah, there's quite a lot. So what's the other one?
It's I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. A book that I didn't appreciate enough until I really finished reading it and just thought about it over and over. And I think in the last year and a half, I think I liked the book twice as much as when I first read it, which might sound crazy, but it's a book that I think about quite a lot.
And it's also, the ending is just freaking amazing. The ending
Yeah, it's an
hits you
amazing.
like that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you like that, another post-apocalyptic book you might enjoy is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. So yeah, that's yet another post-apocalypse about a father and son in going across the post-apocalyptic wasteland, and they only got each other. They're only kind of lights in the darkness around them. It's almost like flickering lights. You get the sense of optimism from them, but nothing else. It's a very bleak novel. And I think I've said it before on my channel this way, but it's almost like you're lighting you light up, and there's a wind. Anytime that light can go out. And that's how you feel when you read about these two as they go across. They're trying to work their way to the coast. But I think I can see already you like post-apocalyptic novels. Kind of end of the world scenarios and survival. Am I right?
Definitely. I think if it's well written,
Yeah,
and the premise is sound, then yeah, absolutely, it's a very interesting subject matter. I'm sure it's something that everyone at some point has thought about. So
yeah, yeah. So that is The Road, Cormac McCarthy. Your turn. Fantasy.
yeah, so we were talking about like if you like fantasy but you're a horror reader, or you want to jump from between fantasy and horror. Obviously we already spoke about The Stand, but I think that sets up nicely The Dark Tower, which I think
Yeah.
everyone says this is a fantasy series. I don't know, I haven't read enough of the books yet to know,
Uh,
but
yeah.
I think it's a very
Also,
good bridge. Seems so far, yeah.
yeah, I'd say it's science fiction, fantasy, horror, pretty much just a mixed genre. And it's kind of got very weird science fiction vibes as well. It's almost like a time travel thing. I think when you get further into it, you'll see what I mean. But yeah, it's got a bit of everything here. How far are you now?
Literally, two
Actually,
books.
don't. Yeah,
Sorry.
just say the books. Don't say any details because my wife's on the
No,
first
no,
book.
no. Because I'm trying to read. I'm trying to do a 28 book extended read through, where you've got to read certain Stephen King books in a certain order. So I literally only read so far was Salem's Lot, The Stand, and The Gunslinger, and in 2 books time I'll be reading Drawing of the Free. Sorry, Drawing of the Free. So very early doors.
Yeah. And you're enjoying it so far, though. You're loving it.
I'm starting to think Stephen King might be one of the best authors I've read, actually. I'm really surprised just how amazing it is.
Welcome to the dark side. Welcome to the dark side. I'd also strongly recommend Clive Barker. If you like fantasy and you want to cross over to horror, Clive Barker writes a lot of dark fantasy. Weird World, The Great and Secret Show, and Imagica. And I think you might be blown away. As a fantasy reader, you'll be blown away by his dark fantasy. I think his horror would be too much for you for now. Very dark. But his dark fantasy, I think, world building is absolutely exceptional. And I also think you should try Robert McCammon, not just Swan Song, which I've mentioned, but you should try Boy's Life, even though that's kind of a strange one. Not even sure which genre it belongs to. But Robert McCammon is a master storyteller. So start with Swan Song.
Yeah, I've got all the books basically you've mentioned. I've pretty much got on my shelf because like people like you and Mike and all those. I've been watching your stuff, so I've kind of got those recommendations at the back of my mind already. So yeah, he's definitely Robert McCamm's definitely an author that, along with probably if I choose 3 authors that I should have started reading and I haven't already, he'd be in there, and so would Ray Bradbury probably. So
Ray Bradbury.
yeah,
Yeah. Carry on.
no, I'm just saying they're probably 2 of the 3 authors that I know. I'm almost 100% sure I'm going to absolutely love, but I haven't started. It's something I do quite a lot, actually. If I know I'm going to love something, I kind of put it off, so I've always got something to look forward to. It's a terrible thing to do because we could all die any day, but I like to do it anyway because, yeah, but it's a bit of an issue, really.
Ray Bradbury is just unbelievable. And I'm actually going to be doing a show on him soon. And you should actually also watch Gareth at Book Songs and Other Magic. He's doing a Ray Bradbury deep dive on his channel.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fast becoming another favorite author of mine. The more I read Ray Bradbury, and I'm enjoying his science fiction as well, which is, I don't read a lot of science fiction, but I really enjoy everything he's written. But my favorite horror by him is Something Wicked This Way Comes. And then I haven't read The Halloween Tree yet, but there's quite a number. And then there's another absolutely beautiful book. It's not horror. The Dandelion Wine.
Yeah.
It's coming of age, beautiful. You need to read these books. They're stunning.
That would be the first book of his I read is Dandelion Wine. I picked it up recently because I've got a list in order. The second book I'd like to read is Something Wicked This Way Comes, but it's a particular copy that I want. I want a particular cover, and I've been bidding and trying to get this particular copy. You see, so that's why it's not on the shelf yet. But yeah, I'm well aware.
Yeah, I've got one copy, and from where I live, I can't be fussy. Okay, I might find another copy at some stage, but yeah, it's a special book. It's really, really special, and he's a brilliant author. A lot of people can't get into the way he writes. It's very lyrical, very poetic, but I find it absolutely beautiful. And I'm actually doing a reread right now as part of the banned books from MJ, and I'm rereading Fahrenheit 451, and I'm enjoying it. I'm about halfway through now, so I'm going to have something to say about that.
I'll be very interested to see that video.
Yeah, because the whole thing about banning books is just freaking ridiculous, right? Yeah. So yeah, now tell us a bit more about your channel. You don't want to just leave straight away.
I just wanted to, if we've got time, I just wanted to mention one fantasy recommendation for horror fans, if we've got time.
Say that again. Yeah. Well, can I just quickly go through? We got more than enough time. You don't have to worry about that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do some comments.
Okay, so let's just do some comments. I just want to see where we hit off there. And sorry, people, if this shakes, it's because I've got the mouse on the thing. Okay, so do you generally recommend reading Stephen King by publication order, or does it not really matter? It doesn't really matter unless you read one of his series, right? You have to read The Gunslinger in the order of publication. You can't read the 7th book and then the 5th book. So if it's a series, then otherwise it really doesn't matter. And has he written any other series off the top of your head?
Yeah, well, I think
Shining.
Yeah, I was thinking before, like Kat mentioned the Holly books, the books that all have Holly Gimli in it. But also, if you look at all the books, the books that have Castle Rock characters in them, you can read those in like timeline order.
You can, but you don't have to.
You don't have to. But I think if you were that way inclined as a reader, if you just go and speak to a Stephen King fan, they'll probably tell you. They'll probably give you a reading list.
I could very well, because there are a lot of books that allude to the Dark Tower. There are loads of books, and I could very easily go right to the beginning and read all the Dark Tower books along with the Dark Tower in the order that it's supposed to be read. But it's just going to take too long.
Yeah.
And I've already read the entire Dark Tower. I've read most of what Stephen King has written. So for me to go back and do that whole thing again doesn't really make sense, especially if I'm reading other horror, right? But it helps sometimes, like you're right, absolutely right. But it doesn't. It's not completely necessary.
No, definitely, it's definitely not necessary. No.
Yeah, I've only read The Gunslinger. I'm thinking of the Year of Dark Tower. That'd be cool, Kat. That'd be very cool. You could do a buddy read with my wife, and maybe me. I'd like to read it again before I die. Okay, and then Pharaoh chronologically is beneficial. Replacing previous writes about it's an entire universe. That's true. Like you said, it is true. But the books are standalone. I mean, a lot of his early books are standalone. He does leave Easter eggs in a lot of the books, part of the universe, so it would actually be ideal to read everything in order, but it's not an absolute rule, except in the case of a series, right? Yeah. Okay, there. For me, earlier works are better than the late ones. Yes. They're also much more bloodier and horror related. Anita. Easter eggs, which is quite awesome. Okay, so it's nice of the other people to pop in, even if they've decided to bugger off now. Also, if you ever read the Bill Hodges series with Holly, I'd say read Holly's story in order to see her character develop, which is exactly what I'm doing right now, which is actually very interesting because I'm doing a book readathon thing called All About Holly. And it's with Greg at another bibliophile reads. Bad from Bad is Rad. I've missed her today. Shame. And then there's a whole bunch of us doing this. And so we're reading every single book with Holly as a character before we read the novel Holly. And we finished the Bill Hodges trilogy now. And so next month it's going to be The Outsider. And then it's going to be If It Bleeds. And then finally we'll get to Holly. So that's one way of doing it.
Definitely.
Thank you, Captain Anita. Alicia, just subscribe to. You got a new subscriber, Alicia.
Always happy to have an extra person drop by.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic, Alicia. They're speaking very highly of you. Yeah. I started Holly last night. I'm so excited to finally get to it. Favorite literary character of mine. Yeah, Kat, I'm looking forward to getting to the main novel. I'm enjoying going through everything until then. But it's good to hear from you that you enjoying the character. She's a very interesting, weird character, but I like that. That's good. Okay, I know you're dying to tell me about another fantasy book, so let's go.
So it's probably the first pure fantasy book really that I'm going to mention, but yeah, there's in horror, as you were saying earlier, there's so many types of horror, right? And this book I feel has, even though it's a fantasy book, it has a lot of types of horror in it. It has a little bit of kind of post-apocalyptic, has ghosts, it has monsters, it has body horror, it has people that die that don't stay dead. But it is a fantasy. But it is a fantasy book, and that's Prince of Thorns or the Broken Empire trilogy by Mark Lawrence.
Okay.
And it's a very controversial series because the content is extremely graphic, and the things that happen to the characters and happen in the book is often seen as being very crass and being very unnecessarily adult or violent. But it's actually, if you read through the trilogy, it's not a particularly long trilogy either. These books are, probably about 400 pages each. So for fantasy, that is short. I know for other genres that's not short, but for fantasy, that's like a micro read.
Is it a standalone?
You can read this as a standalone, but it's supposed to be read as a trilogy. You can only read the first book as a standalone. The other two books will make no sense to you at all. So yeah, if you're going to read past the first book, you have to read the third book as well. Then, so that's the choice you have to make. But that. Unfortunately, that's a lot of.
That's going on my TBR. That's going on my TBR. That sounds very interesting. That's definitely going on.
It doesn't read like traditional fantasy. It reads fast, like a thriller, and the content. As the books progress, it gets more and more disturbing, really. And yeah, at times it's horror. There are some scenes I can pick out that you think, well, this would be straight out of a horror book. But at times it is pure fantasy as well. So it just depends what chapter or what character you're riding with, really. But yeah, certainly if you're okay with very violent, in your face content, then you won't be scared away. And I think maybe that's a lot of people in fantasy, this book does not get very good reviews. A lot of people in fantasy don't really like that kind of content. They think it's a bit obnoxious, you know. But it's a shame because there's a good story to be told there by Mark Lawrence, and I feel like he's been tarnished with this bad boy brush, that he's a bit of a bad boy author or something, just because this one book upset a few people, you know. So yeah,
that's something to be on the lookout for, because I'm starting to read a little bit more fantasy again. I've decided on my channel what I want to do is that, like, every month I want to have 1 or 2 books. Like, the last few months I've had Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm reading some what's it? Not Alfred Hitchcock. Hound of the Baskervilles. Who's that? That's mystery.
Yes.
Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Yeah.
So I'm reading that this month. So just something different, once or twice, just to throw in with all the other horror. I am going to start reading again. I hope I don't lose like 1,000 million subscribers. But I'm starting to read again just a little bit of that D&D series that I read when I was a teen. That's a Dragonlance Chronicles.
Oh, right, yeah.
That'll be the equivalent of me reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, 1 episode each month. So I'm going to do that with the Dragonlance, just for myself, and just for something fun. But you also know that one of my favorite series of all times, one of my favorite books, it's probably in my top 10. It is in my top 10. Is Magician by Raymond Feist. And both the Rift War series, as well as the Serpent War. And the Serpent War, there's demons, freaking steal souls. There's all sorts of stuff in those, which I think is pretty dark. But those are 2 of my favorite series ever. So yeah, just goes to show fantasy can get pretty damn dark, eh?
Definitely, it can do it. It's not that. I don't think it's that dark these days. I think there's a lot more out there for people that don't like dark fantasy. But yeah, definitely, like you were saying, if you go back a few years, there's certainly some dark stuff there for sure.
Yeah. I mean, they do categorize high fantasy, which I suppose Magician is high fantasy. It is. But now you get dark fantasy, grim dark fantasy, all this other stuff. We're not going to go into that. I did that the other night. But But I would strongly recommend Clive Barker, Weevils, The Great and Secret Show, Magica. It'll blow you away. And you're the sort of person, you're the sort of reader that can take horror with the fantasy. I think you'll really enjoy that. It really is something different. Okay, let's just see what everyone has said before we. Okay. I started Holly last night. I've had that book on my radar for a while. First, let me know if you can handle it. I'm not sure if they. Oh, Alicia, I didn't know you read fantasy. You'd have to give me some suggestions. I want to get into grimdark. You're going to have to give me some ideas. And yes, Kat says, my favorite book, one of my favorite books. This is probably my second favorite book of all time after Swan Song.
Well, Weeworld.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's basically about these creatures that are hiding away from a threat, and they thread themselves into this rug, into this carpet. And there they hide from this threat that wants to obliterate their world. And then obviously people get involved, mortals get involved. I'm not going to go through the whole story now, but it is, I know, but it's big, it is epic, it's fast moving, it's imaginative, it's beautiful, and there's a lot of some seriously messed up characters and creepy characters and horror in there as well. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I've read it twice, and I think I've spoken about it just about every time on my live. I need to stop doing that. But really, it is just, I think you'll love it. I think you will really enjoy it.
we can't help but be excited by what we're passionate about. So
No, you can't.
sometimes that book has to come back out, you know.
It has to. And in fact, look at this cover.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful. So the cover is actually the carpet around the outskirts of the cover. Yeah, it's absolutely magnificent. And so I recommend this. Okay. Okay, my man. Any last words before we say goodbye to everyone?
Just thank you everyone for coming. I think me and Cliff could have talked forever, probably.
Yeah, no, we did it, man.
But yeah, it's been so good to see so many people that I know come in. Obviously, you watch Cliff's channel, so you've obviously got good taste. So
Yeah, no, it's actually nice to have a little bit of crossover on channels sometimes. And we've discovered that actually we're quite similar. Because I think a lot of your fantasy, that last recommendation that you gave me, what's it called again?
Prince of Thorns.
Prince of Thorns.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to write that down because I need to get hold of that book. That sounds brilliant. That sounds like my thing. Thanks, Farah. She says this was fun. So nice to see both of you chat. Thanks for being here, Farah. Alicia.
Yeah, cheers, Farah.
And Alicia, I'll have to go back. And Kat, thank you so much. I still need to join one of your 3 o'clock in the morning book sprints. I'm sorry I haven't. And what was this? I'll have to go back and watch what I missed. Thanks for this. And Kat says, terrific seeing both of you. And happy weekend, Cliff and Al. Love this live chat. And Obscure Book Adventures, thanks for hosting this live. Very cool. So all we can say to everyone is thank you so much for joining us. And you're going to stick around a little bit just afterwards, okay? We'll say
yeah, no worries.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you for being here. We both had a blast. But let's do this again, maybe from your side next time. Okay?
I don't know about that.
But thanks everyone. And we're going to finish this off in 3, 2, 1. And make